Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another webinar. We are joining you live from the studios of the Jamaica Intellectual Property Office. We are happy that you're able to join us this morning. Last week, we had our webinar on patents and the new law, and today we'll be talking about our collective management organizations, CMOs, knowing your copyright licensing bodies this morning. And this is the first in our series. And this morning, we're delighted to have our own executive director and attorney at law, Miss Lilyclaire Bellamy. And from JAMS, Jamaica Music Society, we have the managing director, Mr. Evon Mullings. I am sure that you will be educated, you'll be informed this morning. So stay tuned to the conversation. And now over to you, Miss Lilyclaire Bellamy, to begin the conversation. Morning, Mr. Mullings. I'm not hearing you.
Okay, hi. I was on mute for a moment there. How are you? Good morning. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm well, thank you, and happy to have you. We're in for an interesting series, and we're happy that we are able to start our conversation with beginning with JAMS as we begin the CMO series on collective management organizations. Miss Bellamy, over to you.
I can't hear you and you can't hear me, right?
I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you clearly.
Very loud and clear.
Okay, let me try and work it out. Let me see what I can do to get back sound because I don't know what the problem is. One sec.
Go ahead, Miss Bellamy.
No, not a problem. It usually work. Last time it worked.
No, we're hearing you.
No, not hearing now. Chantal, can you say something?
I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you
No.
clearly. We're hearing everything that you're saying.
That's 100%. Is what they call a comedy of errors. Hi.
Okay, so thank you again for joining us this morning. We will begin in a few. So, as previously announced, we'll be having our own executive director this morning, Miss Lilyclaire Bellamy, and managing director from the Jamaica Music Society, Mr. Mullings, with our conversation this morning.
The line going from left to right, showing me the full term, the volume.
Sure, your mic. Can you hear me now? No. Okay, you're hearing me now. Cool, perfect. I'm not hearing you though. Say
Are you
something,
hearing me now?
We're
somebody.
here. Are you hearing us now?
Cool, I hear you now.
Okay,
All right,
awesome.
thanks.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody, for staying with us. As previously announced, we have our executive director, Ms. Lilyclaire Bellamy, and we have Mr. Mullins, and we'll be having an exciting conversation this morning. So we hope that you'll stay tuned with us. All right, over to you, Ms. Bellamy.
Okay, good morning. Sorry about all of those hiccups. Good to see you, Evon. Sorry I'm not there in studio, but
That's fine.
I'm following doctor's orders, so I'm supposed to avoid everybody and not share what I have. It's not COVID, but it's a virus.
Okay.
It's so good to see you, and I'm happy you were still in Reggae Month and you have started the first in our series with our collective management organizations. But Evan, what is JAMS? What does JAMS mean? What does the acronym mean?
Okay, well, before we even get to that, let me just first say, it's really a pleasure to be the first in your series on the CMOs. It feels good to be first in this particular instance. But also, I'd love to say, welcome as well to your audience, those tuning in and watching and listening to, this particular webinar. Well, JAMS. JAMS is actually Jamaica Music Society. That's what it stands for.
Okay,
Yes, persons often get thrown off by that M, that extra M, that it's seemingly an extra M, but it's really Jamaica Music Society.
okay.
Yes.
So Jamaica Music Society. So anybody who plays music can become a member of your society. So can I become a member of JAMS?
Well, yes, you can, but you'd have to meet a certain criteria first and foremost. We are a members body that represents particular category of rights owners. So we first and foremost
What
represent
do
the
you mean
record.
by rights owner, Evan? What's a rights owner?
Okay. All right. So a rights owner would be that person who we consider to have legitimately own rights in sound recordings or in works of authorship. But where we are concerned as JAMS, we're speaking specifically about the rights that exist in sound recordings. So
So
our
what is
members,
a sound recording? Sorry,
uh,
Evan, we're doing very
yeah,
basics because we're making sure that
yeah,
everybody understands clearly. And you know,
right.
sometimes we tend to say, oh, it don't mean anything to me. I don't
Yeah,
have no sound recording. What you talking
yeah.
about? So what is a sound recording?
Okay, well, I mean, I'll get to share a lot of this because I do have a presentation that I love to, but nevertheless, so a sound recording would be that what we consider to be that complete and final work of that you would hear being played on air or so forth. So it's the actual complete recording of the performance of the artist and the musicians, all of that combined along with, of course, the lyrics and the musical composition. So the recording itself is something which is made up of the what we call the song. So the
Okay.
actual coming together now of lyrics, of the musical composition, which we typically want to call the beats, and then
Right.
of course, right, you get the artist who on top of that now performs the actual vocals over that particular musical composition. And all of that is then combined now with the skills of the engineers, mixing engineers,
Ah,
mixing engineers, and they then bring all of that together to give us that final beautiful sound that we all like to listen and enjoy when you hear it on the radio or play it in our car. What you then hear in your car or at home, that is what we consider to now be the sound recording,
oh,
vis-a-vis vis-a-vis what you'd hear referring to as musical work, where the musical work would really be components of the actual final sound recording.
okay. Thanks for that, Evan. That makes it quite clear. I know you have a presentation, but I just have some more questions that I want to ask you,
That's
just for
fine.
the sake of clarity.
Right.
Okay, so you were saying I have to meet certain criteria to become a member of JAMS. Can you tell me what the criteria would be?
Okay, so if you are applying as a record producer, then you would have to come to us with at least 3 sound recordings that have already been commercially released. Now, when we say commercially released, we're talking about songs that can be, well, recordings, let's be clear, that can be found or bought, let's just say whether in a physical store or even online. And I shouldn't say even online, it's more about specifically online in this particular time, because very few producers and labels are really releasing songs now in physical formats. But nevertheless, we do have persons, a producer who may come to us who does not have a current release, but he may be coming to us with vinyls or from that period. So once he comes to us and we are able to verify that that sound recording was released, properly made available in the marketplace, then and he has at least 3 of those, then he would qualify as a record producer to become a member of Jams, right? As a performer, that is separate. The criteria is a little different. As a performer, meaning an artist or an actual musician, player of instrument, you need to have appeared on at least 10 recordings as a performer.
10.
Right. 10. Now,
Oh,
I'll be very happy to explain why 10 later on.
okay.
Because there's a very good rationale behind it at this particular point in
Okay.
time. Right.
Okay. So, all right. So, Jams is a Jamaican society.
Right. Absolutely.
Are you
100% indigenous collecting
okay?
society. Yeah.
Exactly. And congratulations on being an indigenous Jamaican collecting society, because it's very important for us to have collecting societies that are indigenous and understand our culture and our artists. I think that is really a significant and important thing for us to acknowledge and to recognize the important role that the collective management organizations play in Jamaica. Because I'm not sure that we're properly seized of the importance of the work that the collective management organizations do. So you said you needed to have a certain number of works and that they had to be published. Do I have to pay a fee if I want to join Jams?
Well, in our case, no. It's free. The application to join to join is free. There's no membership fee either. So applying and being a member, it's absolutely free of cost to join. We have done that deliberately so that there is no barrier to persons who
Okay.
want to, become a member, and they would have had their recordings released and everything. But then just to come up with that additional, whatever the fee is, we have said to ourselves, let us not let that be a hindrance to anyone who wants to be able to benefit from our services. So at this point and for the last 14 years, we've not charged any application or membership fee.
Okay, that's really good to know. So when somebody becomes a member, are they a member for life?
Essentially, yes. They are essentially a member for life. They sign on with a membership agreement, and they are however free to terminate and to end that agreement at whatever time they feel fit. But typically, though, it is within they would have to give us a particular period of notice, and that period of notice is typically 3 months, so that we can properly then close off the arrangements that we would have had regarding that person's repertoire with the various partners. So give us 3 months notice, and then you'll be free to move on to join another society if you so wish. So that is what and how we operate as it relates to your tenure or period of membership with Jams.
Okay, so one other question, Evan, in terms of the membership. Are you a standalone organization or are you affiliated with other international organizations? And could you share the name of some of those organizations that you may be affiliated with?
Well, certainly. I mean, we didn't just fall from out the sky. We we basically we were fortunate in that there's an international body called the IFEI. It stands for International Federation of the Phonographic Industries, a long term. But the IFPI, they are the international body that really sort of oversees the work of producers societies internationally. So JAMS is actually a part of the IFPI, and they were very instrumental in seeing JAMS's own establishment here locally. So they were the ones who basically knocked heads, so to speak, with local bodies, local industry bodies at the time, and brought JAMS into fruition. So we are very much a part of that governing body, international governing body, in as much as, say, an author society is part of CSAC. We are part of IFPI, right?
Okay. So can you tell me, is there another organization like JAMS in the rest of the English-speaking Caribbean, or are we special?
We are special, but we are not alone.
Okay.
We certainly have, there are certainly other similar societies existing in the Caribbean at the moment. In Barbados, there's COSCAP, which is equivalent to JAMS, except that they also represent other groups of rights owners, performers, and composers and songwriters also. And over in Trinidad, there is COT. And in fact, there is another, I must say, there's another society in Trinidad. I can't recall the name at the moment, but they're also responsible for handling neighboring rights. COT, COT of late, well, COT has always been an author's rights body. However, in the last year or so, they have actually taken on the mandate to also represent neighboring rights. And so they have widened they've widened their scope of work within the Caribbean. There are other spaces within the Caribbean, the Eastern Caribbean in particular, represented currently by ECHO. ECHO, however, is an author society, much like JIPO is.
Right.
And in that part of the Caribbean, there's no representation currently for producers and performers. That should be changing soon, we hope, based on some work that we and IFPI are doing with ECHO to basically facilitate the collection of, basically administration of performers and producers' rights on the Eastern Caribbean side also. So right now, there are 3 societies within the Caribbean that are handling neighboring rights, Jamaica, Barbados, and Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay, one question, Evan. If I'm not a member of JAMS and I'm not a member of any collective management organization, can I collect any money?
Yes and no. And I'm going to tell you yes in the sense that you could actually choose to take on the costs on your own to employ an attorney and an accountant and possibly a team of other persons to then go out and negotiate, with all the various music users, all of those entities that are playing your music. And so it is possible, but it is not practical. And so we therefore say no, in the sense that you typically have to be part of a collecting society in order to benefit from this type of royalty that we call performance royalty. Some would say performing if you're on the author's side. If you're not part of this structure, then certainly for JAMS, we do not have the authority to act on your behalf. And so while as a producer, you may be releasing your music and it's getting airplay or being played in a club, etc., we do not have any authority to collect on those recordings unless you would have become a member and directly given us the mandate to work on your behalf. So you, at that point in time, would still be leaving money on the table or not collecting these royalties through JAMS if you chose not to become a member. So in a sense, if you're not part of a system, of a collective management system, you would not be able to collect this type of royalty.
Wow, that's not good. That really isn't good. So it really is in your best interest to become a member of JAM. And the process that you explained earlier is quite simple to become a member, and you don't need to find any money to pay a membership fee. So really, there's nothing to deter you.
Absolutely.
So I'd encourage anybody who is listening who satisfies the criteria to get in touch with Evon. And they have there's a website you can visit. And Evon, you want to give them a number that they can call you?
Oh, sure. I mean, they can reach us on 978-1010. Simple.
That's a really straightforward and easy number, 1010. Everybody should be able to remember that. And I hope, arising from this webinar, that you'll have more persons who indicate a willingness to join with JAMS. All right, Evan, one question now, and this is turning away from the creatives, but to members of the public. So I'm playing music. I'm playing music at home, but I also have, let's pretend I'm not working with JIPO and I have a club. So I play music and persons come in and pay. Do I need to get a license from you? Is there a need for me to have a jams license?
Well, absolutely. The general principle regarding the work that we do surrounds the fact that it's coming straight from the Copyright Act itself, which basically says that once you are playing music, whether in a club or a hotel, once you're publicly performing, publicly playing recorded music, then certainly you need the permission of the producer, in our case, to play legally the recordings. And so the system is set up so that there is a CMO, a collective management body such as ours, to be that intermediary between those persons, those clubs, that club operator like yourself, that intermediary between them and the owners of the rights in the recording. So we are that middleman, so to speak, who then ensures that the club owner and the party promoter, the restaurants, the stores on the mall, the pharmacy, the supermarket, you name it, they all,
Where music is played, that's what you're telling me, everyone. So if I go
where,
into
where, where
the gas station store and they're playing music, they're supposed to have a license?
well, absolutely. I mean, wherever music is played, rights owners must be paid. That's a slogan that we've used over the years. And it really is designed to ensure that the creators, the owners of the rights, are able to benefit from the work that they have put in and from their investment. As a producer, certainly the producer, from his standpoint, producer slash record label, from their standpoint, they are really risk takers. They are investors. And so they would have spent money, certainly time, and other resources in bringing the recordings to the public. And that investment that they have made, they typically would want, as any good investor would want, to be able to get some return on that. And so the Copyright Act really tries to give them that level of protection. But not only them, certainly, the performers also, songwriters, composers, so all of the contributors that are recognized under the Act, they certainly are also in line for compensation once it is that someone in the public, a business operator or an individual, is playing, publicly playing or broadcasting the recording that contains their work. And so our job is really to act on their behalf so that we can then issue you with a permit if you're a party promoter, issue you with a license if you're a business operator, you then pay us a fee, and then we in turn turn over royalties to the producers and the performers for the use of the recordings in that manner.
Okay, so everyone have a question. You said, so does this mean that you issue different types of licenses? Because if I own a store, would you give me a license for a year, or how does it work? Because,
Okay.
we need to be clear so that
Yeah.
everybody knows when somebody comes from JAMS that this is correct procedure. Because as you know, people tend to call the Intellectual Property Office when they
Right.
hear from a collective management organization saying, why are they telling me I should pay a license fee? I bought this music. This music is mine. Why should I pay them money? So is there a formula out there? Okay, because if I'm promoting a party, that's a one-off party. Let's say I'm going to have a party this Saturday. So I plan, well, no parties because of COVID. But if I was having a party,
Right.
COVID is over and we're having a celebratory party. So it's a one-off event. Do I have to pay a fee that is the same as somebody who has a store? How does it work?
Well, the answer is no. The fee that you will pay, whether for your permit or for the license, will depend on, let's say, the scope of the use of the music. And let me explain what I mean. Where it relates to the events and getting a permit, the fee itself is not it's not a single fee that runs across the board for all events. So we have a fee schedule, we have a tariff system in place. We like to call it a tariff system. But in simple terms, it's a list of fees that you would pay depending on the size of the event that you're having. So we try to keep it simple. But persons who are having, there are several types of events. There's a round robin, there's a drink out, there's a big party in the grill, for instance, or there's a huge concert happening somewhere. depending on the size of the event, then the fee that you pay for the permit will vary. And we do this because it's an approach that is used in licensing music generally. And let me explain. The person who's simply having a round robin, a drink out, those persons would typically be having an audience of maybe just a few hundred, a few dozen persons. And so the principle is that you would not necessarily want to charge a small event the same thing as you charge, say, a Sumfest, because they're playing music to two entirely different size audiences. And music really, the fee from music really is tied, in a sense, in a proportionate way to the value that it is delivering to the audience. And
Right.
so, right, so we do have a fee schedule that takes into account two things where events are concerned: whether or not there's an admission fee to the event, and also what we call the expected attendance. So we do allow party promoters, event organizers, to tell us that level of detail. We, of course, do some amount of background check regarding the numbers that are being provided. And once we're satisfied, then we basically turn to our fee schedule and simply identify where in this fee schedule this particular size event falls. And they would pay that fee. So we have, however, a special category for events that they're not charging an admission fee, because persons will say, well, I'm not charging any fees, just a simple thing I'm having around the corner. Why do I even need to pay anything? The point is, you're still playing music that does not belong to you, so the fee is still applicable. However, fortunately, where there's no admission fee, the permit cost is actually quite, it's much smaller than an event that is charging an admission fee. And it starts as small as $4,000 for an event, say, under 200 persons, and they're not charging an admission fee. And then it goes incrementally upwards based on the size and other parameters. As it relates to businesses, though, you basically get one type of license, but depending on whether or not you're a bank, a bar, a restaurant, or a hotel, the parameters what we use to determine the fee will vary. So, for instance, a hotel's fee is based, in our case, on the number of rooms that they are operating. Right.
Okay.
So
Evon, I have a question. How there's been a downturn in tourism.
Right.
So I have a 500-room hotel, and well, unfortunately, for the last year, only 10% of my rooms have been occupied. Do I still have to pay the same fee? And another side to that question, I planned an event and then there was a hurricane, so nobody could go, and I've already paid the fee. Do I get back any of my money? How does that work? So two things. One, if my event is rained out or some other act of God, or now with the pandemic and nobody coming to the hotels, and instead of having 500 occupants, I've had 10 occupants. So the reality that's facing our sector now.
It's definitely something that we have been taking into account from the onset of the pandemic. It's something that we have been very mindful of. So one of the first responses that we took was to basically lower the cost of the permits. So we had immediately discounted our permits by, I think, up to 25% during that period of time when there is no events or few events were being held. So that was the first response. If, however, you've announced an event and it got rained out or so forth, or, no, not rained out, but cancelled or postponed, then certainly you are eligible for. You can apply for a full refund. We do give full refunds. We do, however, we do, however, ask that some level of we do put in some level of verification, just to ensure that the event actually did not take place. So yes.
Suppose it's not cancelled, but they expected 500 people, right? And as we say in Jamaica, the event flop. 10 people came. Is there any hope for that person?
For that promoter? Typically, that's a good question. But typically, we would not make an adjustment in the fee that they would have paid. Typically, and let me tell you why we've taken that approach. it's not our approach cast in stone, but based on how we operate, we have a relationship with promoters and with the business community, which I think they operate. Our approach is this: we allow you at the time that you're making the application for the permit to tell us what your expected attendance is, and what your admission fee is going to be, etc. Now, we expect you to provide reasonable numbers. We're not always able to verify because this is in advance of the event taking place, but we allow you to provide us with those numbers. And then we basically have an agreement to the effect that that will not necessarily change. If you get 100 persons less, then don't come back to me. If you get 100 persons more, I'm not coming back to you. So it's sort of like that arrangement. But it is within reason though, because however, if we identify that an event that was billed for 1,000 persons had 10,000 persons in attendance, that's a different ballgame altogether, and we would approach them, and the reverse would also hold true.
Okay, cool. That's good to know. I think it's important for persons who are in business to understand that they can come and speak to you, because we're really in different times now, Evan. And I mean, if you do a major outlay and you get no return, we want people to be compliant. The thing is, we want people to adhere to and to follow the terms of the Copyright Act, which is the act under which you operate. So we don't want people to think, oh, this is such a draconian approach. You told me you're going to have 10,000 people at your event and 100 people turn up and you're dead.
No,
Or the reverse. And then the thing about it, some people may think nobody's going to come. And they tell you, okay, we expect 100 people, and that event has 10,000 people. So it works both ways, and I'm happy that you've articulated that so persons understand that it is a conversation and a dialogue that needs to be had.
It really is. And it's about having a business, what we call a business relationship, whether it's an event promoter or a business operator. We've always tried to foster that relationship because most persons who come to us, they are repeat event organizers, for instance. And so we typically would have an idea of the size of a particular event for persons who are repeat. And so there's a history. So on the second occasion or third occasion, sometimes that information gets better within our system. So we have a much clearer view of where those numbers are falling, and so that promoter cannot, basically give us some very random number, because we now have information. And the truth is, we do, and they should, if they are tuning in, they should take note. We do a lot of due diligence. We really do a lot of due diligence, a lot of research. And so at the time of application, we're able to have that very serious conversation about whether or not those numbers are real or if they are real. Right.
And Evan, one question. Do you have persons who visit stores to see if they're adhering to the terms of the license, or if they told you they don't need a license because they don't play any music? And do you go to events?
All right, yeah, we do have licensing officers who do make visits, field visits, as we call them, to business operators. So first of all, there are different times at which we make these visits. So at the time of application, we may have been provided with particulars about a restaurant. They may say, well, they have 40 seats, a 40-seat capacity.
I'm hearing you.
Okay, I lost you
for was interrupted, but I was hearing you still.
Okay. So they may declare to us certain particulars about how they are operating. If we have any doubts whatsoever, we may then dispatch a licensing officer to visit that premises and observe, take information, and speak also with the business operator, and then have that conversation again, if those numbers were off in the application. After the business operator has been granted the license, we do return periodically as well, normally once per year where we can, to observe if there have been any significant changes in how they're operating. Right. And whether or not at that stage we now need to adjust the license itself in terms of the fee and other parameters that may need to be adjusted.
Okay, I have a question, Evan. You say you've been in operation for 14 years. Have you
Right.
seen a change in the take-up of JAMS licenses? Have more people become aware of the relevance of JAMS, and are more Jamaicans or persons resident in Jamaica utilizing the services of JAMS? That was several questions, but
Right. But, I mean, most definitely, we began at a time when compliance was really, it was a tough ball game. We entered and we had to face obstacles which maybe others didn't face, very unique obstacles. Because the first question that we would have been asked at the time, or put to us, is we're already paying a particular fee, right? Why do we need to pay another? Why do we need
I
to pay you
know.
guys? And so we had to overcome that as a first hurdle. But fortunately for us, we were able to, as I said, build relationships.
Okay.
That is a philosophy of ours, building business relationships. So we were able to do that, but also we were able to take on certain innovative approaches, which helped us to basically make or meet the public, where they were, so to speak. So number one, in terms of being accessible to the business community, we made ourselves very accessible. And what I mean by this is that someone who is living in Trelawney or Portland and need a permit, prior to that, it would have been very difficult for them to access the services and get their permit within reasonable time. So through innovation, we brought about a particular system, which to this day has been very effective, where through a partnership with Paymaster, for instance, no matter where on the island you are, within minutes, you're able to get a permit, physical permit in your hand to then take to the police. So we were able to
Oh,
change access considerably, irrespective of where on the island you are. You're able to call the JAMS office. Once you have a phone, it's as simple as that. And once you can find an outlet, a paymaster outlet, or find a Scotia bank to make your payment, an outlet, you would have been able to and are still able to get your access in that way. So we changed access.
okay.
Um, right, so that was one of the first things we did. Thereafter, we basically undertook a promotions campaign. We were all over radio and TV at some point, and that basically put us, made us more familiar to the public, and that helped quite considerably. But most of all, though, we were able to broker partnership as well with the local authorities and the police, the parish councils and the police, who were basically able to assist in that process of compliance and, to some extent enforcement, but more compliance. And so over the years, those those factors combined, accessibility, public awareness, and partnerships, has enabled us to be where we are now. And the public, what we've seen though, Lilyclaire, is that there has been a change now in perceptions. So the perception at first was, or the approach was, why do I need to pay you?
Mm-hmm.
And then it transitioned to, okay, how much do I need to pay you? Right? So
Which is
we have
good.
transition taking place over the years, and we've seen it in the numbers clearly. There are thousands of events and hundreds of businesses that are now licensed by us annually,
That's
and so
good, Evan. That's really good.
it has been a
No,
great
and it,
transition.
yeah, and it also shows, contrary to the narrative out there, that we are open and transparent and we do comply with laws. I think part of our challenge as Jamaicans, we want information and we want to know exactly why. So if you
Right,
come to me and you're saying to me, because your predecessor, your other CMO, which has been around for a few years before you, people
right,
would say, well, they're collecting money. Why does he want money from us? Is,
right,
is,
right.
is, is this a real legitimate collective management organization, or is somebody trying a thing? So, as you said, over time, trust has developed, and so now persons are more willing to pay. And as you
Absolutely.
said, they say, how much?
Right.
Which is good.
More about how
No,
much. Right.
this is good. This is very
Uh,
good.
yeah, man.
I
So
don't
that's
know
so
if,
we've seen that transition, and it really has been something that we're particularly proud of. But at the same
yeah.
time, I should say very quickly that there is still a huge number of music users, broadly using the term, who are still non-compliant for one reason or the other. So the market is still very much open for us
Okay.
to have a greater impact. There are
Okay.
still persons who will say they've never heard of jams. There are still persons out there who will say they've, there are still many persons who do not simply know enough about us and how we operate. And so a webinar like this really is something that is extremely helpful in getting the message out, getting the understanding, where it needs to be.
Okay, so Evan, I think that's a good segue for you to tell me any steps that you, well, we're speaking to you, we're speaking to GEMS, our first collective management organization in the copyright webinar series. But are there any particular steps that GEMS has taken, I don't know, on your own or in collaboration with the other collective management organizations that you want to share with us, your vision for the future, how you can get more persons to become compliant? You can share with us.
Well, over the years, we've had very close ties to our other local CMOs, JCAP and JAMCOPY. We've collaborated on a number of initiatives and efforts over the years. We work very closely on those, and those have actually resulted in some good outcomes. One of those which we are particularly proud of, and I'd love to mention, is, as you would know, the amendment to the Copyright Act, which took place, I think, in 2015. But certainly it would
Yeah.
have been years leading up to that before that change took place. But that was born out of, and that came out of strong collaboration with our partners, our other CMOs.
And your
Um,
JIPO.
of course, I mean that goes without saying. That really goes without saying. So it was really collaboration all around that resulted in in the amendment to the act, which I think have, for our part, we see those changes as favorable changes favorable to our members. Moving the term from 50 years to 95 years, we are happy and comfortable with that. We know that there's still some work to be done to modify, that
Yeah, we're
particular
working on
amendment,
that. And we're
right?
working on that. Actually, you don't know how hard we're working on it, Evon, but we
Well,
are.
I'm happy to hear that.
Oh no, we're working on it assiduously.
Right. No,
But
another.
just to say, unfortunately, how long the process takes.
Yes.
It's not from a want of trying, and it's not from a want of effort. But we're getting there. It's slow and steady, but we're getting there.
I've come to appreciate the process more in terms of the time that it takes, because it's not something that affects only copyright amendments. It builds across the legislative framework. Really, for you to end up with a good piece of amendment, it typically takes time. But I must say there are some which take more than their fair share of time. Um, and on that particular point, I must sit up in my chair and and address this particular matter. As you know, the rights of performers. So even though
Yeah.
at the top of the discussion we spoke about jams representing producers and performers, I
Hmm.
must contextualize that properly. So even though we are established to manage the rights of both groups of rights owners, both producers and performers, we
Hmm.
have not been able to operationalize in Jamaica as it relates to performers. Simply put,
Right.
we can license anybody anywhere in Jamaica on behalf of performers. And that is because the current Copyright Act does not give to performers the remuneration rights that their counterparts in other places in the world already have. So Jamaica would have been a signatory to the international treaties that grants performers these rights. But we have not as yet been able to update our Copyright Act to give our performers or artists, thousands of musicians, the right still does not exist as yet for them to be able to earn whenever the work that they have played on, is used. And that is something that is very painful for us, I must say. And I think you are aware of it because
Very
being that,
painful for us also, Evon, and all parts of the system. So I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but oh no, can you hear me?
I'm hearing it still, yes, I am.
Okay, cool. The video is interrupted, but yeah.
Right.
No, I agree with you, Evan, and it's something that we have been working on and are quite frustrated that we can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. But you, I think, articulated it quite clearly when you said amendments are critical and at the forefront of our mind, but we have to recognize that we work in a legislative calendar that touches on concerns on all aspects and all areas of our
Right.
society. So we're in the line.
Well, I mean, what I would say, just in kind of rounding off that point, is that I'm happy to know that the process is ongoing. We as JAMS will need to nudge that process along as best as we can. Hope we don't break any ribs in the process. But it's we have that responsibility, in fact, an obligation on behalf of the performers that are already members, and also on behalf of the general industry to see this through and within good time. We have come under tremendous strain, I must tell you, because of it.
No,
Um, but we've tried to explain and to be patient with the process at the same time. But we really have to see if we can get that done much faster. However, fortunately for us, though, I must tell you, Lilyclaire, even though we cannot represent performers in the Jamaican space, we have been able to broker arrangements internationally on behalf of performers. And this
which
is
is
something
good.
that has, yes, yes. This is something that we're happy we've been able to do. At the outset, there were very few, if any, other societies who were willing to make this arrangement with us because, as you know, when you are entering into these relationships with other collecting societies, they typically want it to be a two-way relationship.
Yeah, reciprocals, right.
Arrangement. JAMS collects in Jamaica on their behalf, and they
Mhm,
collect in Eritrea on our behalf.
exactly.
Unfortunately, we are not able to do that in Jamaica on their behalf. And so many were very reluctant to even consider the idea. We came upon a partner in the form of PPL based in the UK who was willing to do that unilateral, that one-way agreement with us. And
Okay.
yes, that has worked well for the UK market. However, we have now made a significant change to that particular arrangement where they're now going to be representing us globally. We are
That's excellent.
yes, producers and performers. We're now having global reach, what we call a global footprint on behalf of producers and performers. So in as many territories as you can think right now, we have a presence basically. And so our performer members, while they cannot earn anything in Jamaica for the time being, we are now able to bring royalties from many different parts of the world in for them. This is something that is in place. This is something that is happening. Last year we were in December. We've seen royalties coming from as far away as Poland, Sweden, South Korea, Canada, France, etc. And we're very happy about this new development where we have a wider footprint to serve our members. And even though the Jamaican market is a tough market, our approach right now is to tap more into the international market so that they, even in a time like this, they can see some royalties coming through for them. I will hasten to say that not all performers, not all producers certainly will necessarily see royalties coming in from overseas for them. So it's important that you build a catalog, a good catalog of music that can reach
Okay.
across borders, and that can actually create an impact because that is how you typically will see your royalties manifest for you. So there are some persons who will do well, and I hope my members and the industry appreciates this fact very well, because Lilyclaire, if you were a performer or a producer, there are times when you will see royalties coming in from a particular territory. Maybe it's literally $3 Jamaican is what it turns out to be, right? From a particular territory, yes. But what it's saying though is that your music got played somewhere, it was identified, and you've gotten paid. And that is a far out example, because that's one territory. Across territory, that adds up. And like I'm saying, this is the far end of the spectrum. There are others who do quite well,
That's true.
really well, I must tell you. So even though, and I encourage my members all the while, even though you may not be earning significant sums at a point in time, keep doing good music and building a catalog, and in time, because music doesn't spoil. In time, you may just be fortunate enough to start to see your royalties grow, and that typically happens. Your royalties typically grow with time and with the strength of your catalog.
And I want to use a Jamaican phrase, one cocoa full basket. So if you're getting $3 from several territories, it will add up. But Evon, I agree with you in terms of the fact that we need to work. Well, we work together as it is. Members of the public might not be aware of that, but we do work together, because at the end of it, your responsibility is our responsibility to ensure that persons who are involved in these fields get the just rewards for what they've done. Just like any other profession, once you've done the work, you should be rewarded.
Well,
But I
absolutely.
have one fact. Sorry.
Absolutely. Let me just, before you throw your final question, let me just balance the scale a bit, because I wouldn't want a person to leave with just a memory of $3 in their heads, right?
No. There's more than $3, I'm sure. Tell us okay, Evon, tell us the most you have ever collected for somebody. Can you share that with us?
Well, I can tell you that there are persons who will see 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, 500,000, $1 million. It really and truly, yes, it
Wow,
really and
that's
truly
fantastic.
it really and truly runs a very wide scale. So you should never be discouraged if a particular royalty statement comes through and all you're seeing is 10,000 Jamaican dollars. Never be disheartened, because we've seen it. We have the experience, Lilyclaire, and we've seen with time, just simply out of the blue, someone who was earning next to nothing, several $100,000 from somewhere in the world where their music was picked up, So that's the nature of music, and we want to encourage those producers out there, the performers, to consider this as a long-term investment.
Okay.
A long-term investment. And in particular, our type of royalties, this is what we call the pension side of the business.
Okay.
Yeah.
Apart from the pension, Evon, you also, I don't know how your members feel about it, if they also subscribe to the Jamaican doctrine and not doing a will because you're going to die. But they also need to understand that they can pass this on in their will. So it's important for them to make the provision in their wills so that they don't die and then all of that attendant drama after.
Yes, and absolutely, and that's a point that really can never be overstated. We've tried our best without much success, I must say, to change that whole dynamic. On our application form, we actually ask, "Do you have a will?" And we take that opportunity to then say to those applicants, "Listen, if something were to happen, if the worst were to happen, and there's no will in place, unfortunately, even if we have royalties on hold for you, we could not simply pass it on to someone who turns up, saying that they are the beneficiary. It then has to go through a process. And
letters of administration, and they don't want to pay. The problem is, and I think we need to make this point clear. This is not the last point I wanted to leave with, but I think everyone persons needs to understand that with the letters of administration, it is still a difficult process. It is not a simple process, and your beneficiaries are there waiting and frustrated.
Yes, absolutely. We haven't seen as much take up as really would be desirable. I'm not quite sure of why we hear we are anecdotals from time to time as to why persons don't do it. But for me, it's not it doesn't stand up, you know. What we've had to do to sort of create a different balance, though, Lilyclaire, is to introduce to our members life insurance. And
Okay,
so,
okay.
yes, apart from, we do not just pay royalties anymore. We are more than royalties. I must emphasize that
Oh,
point.
that's good. That's
Yes,
good.
we've definitely evolved beyond just royalties. So our members actually can now qualify for life insurance. We've been able to broker a very handsome deal with one of the major carriers here in Jamaica on behalf of our members.
That's
So
excellent.
yes, so all members can qualify. They are the ones, however, who pay the annual premium, and that
Yes,
is something which we can pay on their behalf from royalties that may be earned, for them.
that's
And
excellent. That's
the
good.
take-up has been excellent. You
That's
know,
good. That's very good, Evon. That's very good.
so
I think that's the point to leave this discussion on, Evan. It was really good having you. And in fact, Evan, I think arising from this, perhaps what we need to do is to have a webinar with our three Jamaican collective management organizations so that persons can have an opportunity to understand what it is the collective management organizations do and the important role they play in our society. Because down the road, when persons get old, this is what they're going to be able to live off. So
yes,
this is very good. And I think this information is necessary. I'd really like to thank you for being our first collective management organization that participated in our webinar. And we look forward to collaborating with you even more. And we look forward to the pandemic being over and we can
yes,
celebrate when the passage of the law takes place that deals with
absolutely,
performance. So,
absolutely. So it was my pleasure. And if you will allow me just a few seconds, just to say that,
yes,
okay, just to say
please go
that
ahead.
right, I'm just noticing an adjustment on my screen. I just wanted to just adjust this quickly. Right. Right. Just to say that, we take pride in the position that we hold as a collecting society, as a licensing body, and we take it seriously. And what I wanted to share with the viewers is that, like I said just now, we are more than royalties. The role
Right.
that a CMO plays is extremely important and goes beyond just representing producers and performers or rights holders generally. One of the things which JIPO has contributed to greatly is Jamaica's removal, for instance, from the USTR's watch list, right? Which I think happened in May, thereabouts last year.
Last year, yes.
Underreported, understated, but I wanted to congratulate JIPO on that, number one, but also speak to the fact that the role of the CMOs was very critical in creating that favorable environment. So along with other factors, our role was very important, I think, in that, because the US looks very keenly, as you know, on the level of compliance within the broadcasting sector, and generally compliance with intellectual property rights matters.
Yeah,
And the
that's true.
work of the CMOs has been integral in bridging the gap and in really bringing a greater level of copyright compliance that the US would have been able to look and say, well, the environment has changed favorably. Let us then remove Jamaica from this watch list. We're not pandering to the US by any means, but at the same time, this is something that's important, to get done, because it has so much implications, really clear, for everybody else. And
It
so I'm happy we're
does.
off the list, and I'm happy that we were able to play a part in creating that environment.
Well, thanks, Evan, and thanks for your support. And we look forward to continued collaboration. We'd invite persons who participated in the webinar to fill out the questionnaire. It's very simple and straightforward. Was the webinar beneficial to you? So we look forward to inviting you to our other webinars, and we thank Evan for sharing with us, Evon Mullings from JAMS, which is
Right.
one of our important collecting societies here in Jamaica. So thanks everybody for joining us. Have a good afternoon.
All right. All the best. Thanks again, Lilyclaire.
You're welcome. Bye bye.
Okay.